Okay, so this is our first movie in the logic game section. So, how do we understand the section? How do we approach the section? Let's take a look at a sample game and let's analyze its basic parts. So here's the sample game, and it says that runners A, B, C, D, and E win first through fifth place in a race, not necessarily in that order. Okay, so let's take a look at that first part that says runners A, B, C, D, and E. Now, how can we interpret this? Well, we can think of it as a group or a set of players, or a set of movable elements. And movable elements are those elements that you can move around into different arrangements, these runners. And this set of movable elements is one of the fundamental building blocks of a game. And this type of group, the movable elements, is found in every game, regardless of the content and regardless of the game. Every game is going to have movable elements. So this is one way of visually representing them. We just have a bunch of runners lying around. We have A, D, B, C, E in no particular order. And we can move them around, and we can put them so that D is in the middle, A, E, B, C are around D, or that D, B, C are in some sort of square, and A is above D. Point is, if we just look at it as a group of movable elements, just runners A, B, C, D, and E, we can move them around in a bunch of different, in an infinite number of different arrangements. So like I said, here we see that we have the movable elements, and we move them around, but without placing them in a particular structure. Okay, so let's go back to our game, and now let's take a look at the second part that says first through fifth place. So how can we interpret that? Well, we can think of it as a group or a set of places, or a set of structural elements. These structural elements create order or a specific pattern and let you know what kind of arrangement to put the movable elements into. And this is the other fundamental building block of a game. And this type of group is also found in every game, regardless of the content and regardless of the game. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we can put the movable elements, who are in a sort of mass, unarranged mass, and now we have them in a straight line. We have B first, E second, D third, A fourth, and C fifth. So here we see that the structural elements give us a specific pattern, a straight line for our arrangement. Okay, so going back to the game, we're always going to have these two groups, and this is the central organization of every single game. You're going to have a set of movable elements, and you're going to have a set of structural elements. Now you can switch these groups. There's actually no objective difference between the two groups. You should choose the one that feels more comfortable, but don't agonize over which one's the correct one. Here, we chose the runners to be the movable elements and the numbers, the places, to be the structural elements, because that's intuitively just makes more sense, but that doesn't necessarily have to be. I mean, we can have A, B, C, D, and E as our structure, and we'll put the places on top of that. So we have 2, 5, 4, 1, 3 above them. Like I said, we've switched these two groups, and now we're arranging the places on top of the runners. That's perfectly fine. The questions in these games are going to be about the different types of arrangements that you get from the combination of structure and movable elements. And they'll ask about the different possible arrangements or diagrams that you can make. So that brings up the question, how can we diagram this? Well, diagrams are important primarily because they collect useful information for making possible arrangements efficiently. So you need to be able to make these diagrams relatively well. First, you need to isolate all the groups of elements. You need to figure out which ones are the movable elements and which ones are the structural elements. Or you need to choose which ones you want to be the movable and which ones you want to be the structural elements. Here we have B, D, A, C, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Second, you choose one group to be the structure. So you pick the one that is more logically a structure. And if you can't decide which one is the structure, you just pick the first one. It doesn't matter, like I said. And here we'll put the numbers as our structural elements, because just in a race, first to fifth place in a race, already gives you a linear structure. Third, we make sure that the elements are arranged logically, and we draw spaces for the insertion of the movable elements. So we put spaces above 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that we would know where we can put the movable elements, the letters in this case. You should always try and see what the logic or the structure or the organization of the game is, and draw the structure according to that. They do make it relatively straightforward to you. They're not going to trick you to try and tell and have you. They're not going to try and trick you by giving you a game that it's very difficult to figure out how it would be arranged spatially. So there's always some sort of logic behind it. And as you do more of these games, you'll just get more experience in identifying it quickly. And you should make sure to place the diagram somewhere on the test page where you can refer to it as you're doing the questions. And the bottom of the page is generally good. It just gives you the most space. Okay. So, to recap, there's a group of elements that we can move around in different ways and put in different arrangements. And there's another group of elements that provides structure for the different types of arrangements. And the questions in the game section will deal with these arrangements. Diagramming the elements is done by isolating groups of elements, choosing one group to be your structure, and labeling spaces so that you can put in movable elements.